Good morning, welcome back. It's your boy Narcissus, back again with another video for your enjoyment. You know, I get asked quite often for tips and tricks when it comes to camera settings and photography skills, and I figured why not make a video to discuss further in a simple but yet detailed and easy to understand way of the basic camera stuff that you should know. When it comes down to it, if you really want to up your photo game and make your photos go from good to great, you need to stop shooting in auto mode, turn that dial to manual, and learn the Holy Trinity of any camera. And that's going to be your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. And once you master those three things, your photos will go from this to that. Now, let's get into it. Roll intro. Okay, first thing first, shutter speed. Your shutter speed is displayed in fractions of a second. So the higher the number, the faster the shutter, and the lower the number, the slower the shutter. Your shutter speed, by definition, is the amount of time that your sensor is exposed to light. Now, your sensor being exposed to said light is what processes and produces your image. When you're using a high shutter speed, anything caught moving in your image will appear frozen and be super detailed. But if you were to lower your shutter speed, anything moving will be less detailed and will have a little bit of motion blur added to it depending on how slow your shutter speed was set to. For example, if you look at these two images, shot one after the other, in this first image, I was using a shutter speed of 1/2000 of a second. I look pretty solid, with a lot of detail. It's like I'm frozen midair doing my Spider-Man pose or whatever you want to call it. Now you switch it over to the next photo, drop it down to 1/30th of a second, and look at the difference it made. You can really see that motion blur in action and the loss of detail. But be warned, depending on your shutter speed, the brightness or the amount of light let into your photo will be affected as well. Because of your shutter opening and closing, the faster you have it, the less light gets let in, but the slower you have it, the more light you let in. Example, these two photos are exactly the same but with different shutter speeds. See the light difference? It's important to remember this because depending on the where, when, and what you're shooting, you might have to adjust your plan of action accordingly. Next is your aperture. Your aperture is the size of the opening that controls the amount of light that gets into your sensor. Now, your aperture is measured in what's called an f-stop, displayed in F numbers at the bottom of your camera. Now, here's where it gets a little confusing. You see, the lower your f-stop, the bigger the opening in your lens, whereas the higher the f-stop, the smaller the opening is. You may say, oh, what does that do? Just control the brightness of your image? And yes and no. If an f-stop of 20 or more is used, yes, then your light will be reduced drastically, but the main answer is no. Your aperture mainly controls the depth of field in your image. Basically, what's in or not in focus. A low number or a low f-stop is really good for isolating your subject and really blurring out the background and or foreground. Typically, you'd see this when it comes to portraits. The person is nice and clear and in focus, and the background is nice and blurry, and that blurry background is what's called a bokeh. A higher number, on the other hand, is normally used when shooting, say, a landscape. Everything is in focus and clear as day. Simple, nothing else to it. Last but not least is your ISO. Now, your ISO is your camera sensor's sensitivity to light, to put it simply. The way I like to think of it, I think of the S in ISO to stand for sensitivity, and that's helped me remember it, and I'm hoping that maybe it could help you remember it too. Most cameras, your lowest setting you can put for your ISO is going to be 100, and they can go upwards of 2000 or more. The higher you make this number, the brighter your image will be. Think of it as adding artificial light to your photo. Your ISO will be mostly used for any low light situations, such as indoors or nighttime photography. Now, you have to be careful when you're using your ISO, because if you're going up too high, your photo will start producing unwanted grain or noise, as it's called, in your image. For a general rule of thumb, you want to keep your ISO as low as you can go and always use it as a last resort when it comes to trying to make your image brighter. Always try to bump up your aperture or lower your shutter speed first before you touch your ISO. Some cameras can handle it better than others. Not every camera's the same. Typically around like 400, you're still in the clear. You might see a little bit, but if you're not too worried about it, or you don't care too much, then it should be fine for the photo you're trying to take. You should be able to arrive to whatever scene or location you're going for your photo shoot or video or whatever it is that you're doing, and you should be able to look at it like, oh, you know what? I should use a high shutter speed in this situation because the kids are running around the yard and I want to catch them in action. Or if you wanted to do some nighttime photography, say some stars, you could bump up your ISO to, say, 800, 1200, maybe even 1600. You could use a super slow shutter speed, basically to the point where it becomes a long exposure, and and you can get images like this, really harnessing your camera's ability to pick up light in the smallest amounts because you're making it so much more sensitive. The point is, all these go hand in hand, and you really can't use one without messing with the others too much. And the more you know these three, the better your photos will be. These three things could make or break your photo, and you can go from average Joe to, wow, that's amazing, that is a great photo. And that difference is night and day. And if you're still confused, then the simple solution to that is just to get your camera, go outside and practice. Practice, practice, practice. It's as what they say, practice makes perfect, right? That's what I did. I didn't know anything about camera or photography or nothing. I went out, bought my camera, did the research, watched a bunch of YouTube videos of people explaining it to me. I got my friends, I practiced on them every day, and here we are now. And I encourage you to do the same. Now I can go on and talk about this all day, but there's nothing better than going out and actually doing it yourself to get that experience and really learning it. Well, that's all I have for today's video. I really hope you learned something today and you can apply this newly found knowledge to your photography. Of course, there's more to learn, but it's important that you start with these ones first. I'm still learning new things every day, and when I learn, I'll share with you. Please, if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, leave a like and comment down below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And are you serious? Are you serious right now? You're gonna just my light just died. Yo, this thing is hot. Look, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? Can you hold on. Can you? It's upside down, but that little icon, it's saying it's hot. Like, this thing is hot. I'm gonna put this in the fridge because this is scary. Oh, also, if you have any photos that you would like to share with me, please feel free to do so. I would love to see what you guys have. As always, it's been a pleasure. And remember, we're just getting started. Peace.